Thanks so much, my dear friend. Well, I had some notes. I'm sorry for the person that wrote them. I'm not going to take into account. Being very respectful, so they said I have to thank you, and then it back to you, and of course, thank all of the Race to Resilient partners. This is, in theory, my final day of the 3-year work that we've been doing, and in my case, with the COP25 presidency, and we will have this moment in the plenary, the high-level event in which we will somehow talk about what we have achieved in this, not only in the 2 years that we've been working together, Chile with the UK, but in my case, since I started in this role right after Katowice, right after COP24. And this is something that I've been mentioning all the time. I was, as well as Nigel, as well as many others, totally biased towards mitigation. And I remember, Poli, the first time we spoke, and you started saying it's so much about adaptation, I was like, okay, then Sebastián Vicuña, another great researcher from Chile, was mentioning the importance of adaptation and resilience, and then I met Maisa Rojas. So I've been surrounded by brilliant minds in Chile that on one side immediately highlight that wait, be concerned if you're focusing too much on mitigation because you will dramatically fail. But then I started this learning journey that took me to the possibility of meeting David, and then meeting Jorge, and then expanding the team, Nora, Theo, the whole of the team, and launching Race to Resilience as, on one side, positioning mitigation at the same level of adaptation and resilience. And so how I say it. Positioning mitigation at the same level of adaptation and resilience. Because most of the time we even fail on saying it the other side. Adaptation and resilience is the most urgent element today, and that's something that we have learned from the COVID crisis, and we will continue failing in tackling this crisis if we do not focus on those that are suffering the consequences of the crisis, of those that are in front of the crisis. And I will bring Sheila Patel again. The poor women of the world will be the ones that will declare victory in this crisis. So I just want to thank. I want to thank to all of my mentors of how much you have taught me, of how much you positively use me to position resilience, whether it's through the Race to Resilience, whether it's through talking very closely to Nigel as well. And I'm sure that if he would be here, he would be reflecting the same way. You have been our guides on how much we exemplify the learning journey for so many people in the world to understand that at least we need to put mitigation at the same level of adaptation and resilience. And this is just one first example of how much we need to transform first our minds, the systems, and then the life and livelihoods of billions of people all around the world. So I'm so thankful for that. And then I will hand the microphone back to you, my dear Jorge.
Thank you, Gonzalo. Beautiful words, so inspirational. I would, be remiss to not mention Nidhi Upayaya. I want to thank her. She is awake right now. She's based in San Francisco, so it's 3 a.m. for her. And she's with us, connected, probably watching live online. She has been the brain, the heart, and the engine of transformations throughout this year. And I really wanted to thank her for all that she has done. Go, Nidhi. So when we launched the Race to Resilience, we started with this idea of creating this metric that we put as aspirational goal of 4 billion people. And when we started receiving all this interest from partners to join the campaign, we realized that we were missing a piece that we haven't seen initially when we started this. That is, innovation. We were very focused and are still very focused on setting up this metrics framework that will allow partners around the world to be able to have a common conversation on how they measure impact, how they put human beings in front of their mission, of the way they are doing things, and how they can capture and then project how these people are being more resilient to climate change. But we were missing a big piece of the equation, which is that there are plenty of actors around the world that are working to innovate the way we see things to address climate change. And so we went through a journey with a set of actors, several of which are today here, I'm glad to say that, and understood that there is a whole space of how we make the incremental changes that we've been trying to address for adaptation to become systemic changes, transformations that allow to have a quantum leap in the way we approach either technological aspects, financial aspects, or governance aspects of resilience and climate adaptation. So I, in honor of all the work that Nidhi has done, she has wrote these talking points that are almost poetry. So instead of me trying to butcher them and try to remember or memorize them, I'm gonna read a bit of this. First, before going there, I just wanted to recognize all the transformations that are part of Race to Resilience. Those are Climate Kick Accelerator, 1,000 Cities Adapt Now, Frontline Funds Accelerator, Coalition for Climate Resilient Investment, BFA Global, who is not they are not with us today, Daraja, Mark, Resilience Knowledge Coalition, the Center for Climate Justice, Glasgow Caledonian University, and the Least Developed Countries Universities Consortium on Climate Change. So I'm going to read this poem. Basically, it's a poem. Our current systems are not working to protect us in the way we want them to. So it is our duty, collectively, to address it. Before I turn it over to our moderator for today, Natalia Vega-Berry, I want to share the following thoughts that we all should remember as we leave COP. And the one thing the world has lacked over the past years has been action on delivering climate resilient solutions. And today, almost at the end of the COP, I'm very happy to say that we finally built something that can deliver on the action and focus on building the resilience of people and nature. We're a strong campaign because of the partners that have joined us. And we want to continue being a campaign that brings organizations together so that we can learn from each other and build on what already exists. Climate hazards, just like the pandemic, will not spare anyone. We have reached the stage in the climate crisis where our goal now is to protect what we have and ensure that we do this for everyone, especially the people who are often left out, women, children, indigenous groups, and low-income communities. Now is the time to implement, evaluate, and innovatively refine the solutions that we have. Building climate resilience is not an over there issue. It is a here and now issue, irrespective of where you live or do business. COP26 is not the end, but the beginning of our work from here on. This is a milestone in our race, but our destination is still some time away. So let's keep creating and scaling solutions we have, and most importantly, keep working together. This is written by Nidhi Upayaya again. Beautiful poem. Thanks for listening. And I'll now pass it to my colleague and a co-national from Peru, Natalia Vega-Berry. Thanks, Natalia.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the Resilience Hub for having me today, and thank you, Jorge. I'm really excited. It's like Gonzalo said, this is the final day for me at COP, and I'm really, really excited. So before we enter into sharing the amazing resilience work we're gonna showcase today, I'm really excited because we're gonna make an announcement of something we have been working for quite some time. But before that, I just want to say my name is Natalia Vega-Berry, and I'm the founder the Chief Impact Officer of the Global Brain. We're a creative incubator, and we focus our work on advocacy, campaigns, and communications, working very closely with the United Nations for the past 8 years. So, like I said, this is a very interesting project. I'm very excited to make this official today. It's called the New Zero World. It's a campaign that is focusing on, it's a collective hero's journey for a resilient net zero future. So this is connecting and bringing the whole new vision of reimagining the future, which is what you guys are working so hard and doing. So I'm very excited about this project. We have different components on the campaign. It is going into just the slides, thank you. It has different campaigning units. We're gonna, we create to build a platform, a community. We're intending to build a storytelling through films and content, and as well as action tracks to catalyze action along with narratives. At the same time, in the next slide, please, we're gonna have a campaign that will promote the whole resilience in net zero world. And also we wanna incubate storytelling with industries that are the need to tend to the shift in narrative on climate change. Industries like journalism, advertising and marketing, entertainment, and media, of course. So this, one of the first components of the campaign is the film. It's a film series. We just started to film in a COP, and we can start with the slides, please, for the film. These are some of the images we have captured in this past 12 days, and our wonderful photographer here, Tom Limbaugh, who is in the audience, generously captured for us. So we can start showing. The very exciting part of this is that we capture different voices. That was our main goal. We capture voices. We wanted to hear from different perspectives and from different leaders that represent different communities. And this is one of the showcases that happened past week. And again, we're just capturing the different, people from all over the world and what their optimism and what they're really imagining about the future they all want to build. We can pass, please. This is one of the young leaders. His name is Jerome. He's a young activist. It's fantastic. He works as an advisor in the White House. He's the youngest advisor ever in the White House. We have a fantastic time with him, and he's one of the characters in one of the series. Please go ahead. This is A.Y. Yan as a musician and activist and artist as well. He brings an interesting perspective about living in sustainable ways in community. Please go ahead, next one. This is Andrew Stewart. He represents the Bezos Earth Fund, another wonderful perspective from him and what is the work, the mission they have now and the future of a resilient and net zero world. Same some capturing some images from the Blue Zone. Next, please. Ellen MacArthur, she's fantastic. The circular economy, if you guys are familiar with that, she is an amazing hero, fantastic woman. Please go ahead, next. And of course, we didn't want to forget about the voices of nature that represented by our indigenous communities here. So for us, it's equally valuable to hear what Andrew Steer needs to say, as well as what our next young woman that represents her community says. So this is an example of some of the leaders we have. This is the beginning of this journey, the beginning of the story we're going to tell. So that is, this is an initiative of our foundation, but I would like to thank and I would like to invite the co-founders of the New Zero World to join me here and thank them for their effort and this project that intends to be a long-term project. Please, Anne Rosenberg and Michael Tracy, if you join me here, and thank you for this. Yeah, just thank you for joining. Thank you, guys. You're amazing. Thank you for the hard work and all the support. That being said, I would like to start with this great, time we have ahead. So I would now like to invite to all of you to share your remarks and share your stories of resilience from the solutions you all have designed with your teams. As a bottom-up approach is key to resilience building to showcase these projects. We will have our speakers now share their work, starting with the community-level engagement solutions. So I would like to invite to join me Mark Harvey. Please join us in front. Mark Harvey, his team has created a service and partnership that aims to improve weather and climate information services, including early warning of extreme weather for urban users, vulnerable communities at the heart of it. Mark, we know your work. It's amazing. And you work with communities on the ground. Let me turn this on. Let's see. Let me see working. Yeah.
Can you hear me, everybody? Excellent. Good. Yes.
So let's watch a video. I think you want to show us something, and so the floor is yours.
Just before we watch the video,
yes,
and we'll do that straight afterwards, I'd like to mention another hidden heroine. Jorge mentioned Nidhi. I would like to mention Anastasia from the Global Resilience Partnership. She is a star.
Aww.
Without her, many of us would simply not be here. And I am incredibly beholden to her, as is the entire team at Resurgence. So, Anastasia, I hope you're watching this.
Thank you, Anastasia.
We love you and we miss you.
Thank you, Nidhi, and thank you, Anastasia.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
Okay, perhaps we could roll with a short video that really gives an overview of Daraja.
To put the focus in a format that was more useful for them and that they would appreciate. We finally came up with icons, and so that's what we currently use today.
The Daraja project has helped my community in various ways. Now people are more keen on the weather forecast. They want to know how the weather is going to be so that they can plan their daily activities. So it has helped us a lot.
Thank you, everybody. I'd like to spend a moment just sharing with you some of the elements behind our theory of change that really allowed Patricia to work with James and reach that staggering 98% early action rate, and also that real acceleration in access up to 93%. So some elements of the theory of change, but also some principles behind our scaling strategy. So on our theory of change, the first thing we did was to work at systems level in the cities of Nairobi and also Dar es Salaam. At the same time, we worked in Tanzania, in Dar. And what we did was to bring the residents of informal settlements and the community leaders to the table as equal actors with the national weather forecasters, and not just. Other key actors in the urban system, the Red Cross, the City Hall, and the city media. And this is the second piece of our theory of change, they worked on a really deep co-design process on a new city-level forecast. Everybody rolled up their sleeves, and the goal was to produce a product that was accessible, intelligible, and actionable. And what that meant was zoning the forecast, allowing the residents to see their informal settlement on that zoned map of the forecast, co-designing the weather icons, working on language. Traditionally, the forecasts go out in English, moving from that through a local relay network based in one of the settlements into not just Swahili, but the urban patois, Sheng. So we respect the language dynamics of our communities and their diversity. And we want to elevate that because that's the way to move beyond official languages into uptake of information by communities. Co-design also, we kind of dumped the official channels for early warning dissemination, step back and ask the communities, where do you get your gossip from? Where do you get your sports news from? Where do you hear about your music from? Those are the channels that we want to bring the forecasts and the early warnings to you from. And by the way, we also want you to feed back. So we really did, when we were looking at channels, it was not just about channels to communities, it was to build them back into the National Weather Agency. So those graphics that you saw were about that process. Thirdly, we tried to jettison this whole idea of information dissemination, this whole idea of first mile, last mile, which suggests that information moves in one direction. It doesn't. It actually, information across a city works in a dynamic, what we call an ecosystem, where there are lots of actors that are intermediaries, there are curators, producers, transformers of information. According to the channel, it can be utterly discredited or totally validated and therefore amplified. So we dumped this idea of first mile, last mile, and we created a dynamic system, again, with the residents. So they brought in their community leader, media. They brought in other channels that they trusted. The final piece was to try to connect the spectrum on a continuum between adaptation and resilience and early warning. Some people try to sort of look at early warning information in isolation, in a silo. That's not the way information works. So we were really keen to work just on daily forecasts that may just help the people like James decide whether to put on a t-shirt or a raincoat in the morning, to decide which matatu, which bus he was going to get from where to get across the city. That daily information is incredibly important for productivity, livelihood, and it needs to be respected, and it's part of the picture of early warning systems design, because that, if you can encourage people to get interested in daily weather forecasts, to habituate themselves to those channels, they are then going to take notice of severe weather forecasts. So those four things are behind those impacts that you saw. Looking ahead, that's a bold statement to reach, I think, 1 billion. There are 1 billion people in informal settlements around the world, at least 1 billion, and they are growing because people are being pushed off the land. How are we going to reach that billion, and within 5-6 years, the first 250 million? Well, the first thing we're going to do is to work with the Race to Resilience and its great new metrics framework to design a really strong financial model. We know that there was a 20-to-1 return in cost benefits in avoided damage and loss in the pilots in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam. We want to test and retest that model for investment, right? And why do we care about that? Not because we want to make any profit. We're a non-profit social enterprise. We want as much of this money to be spent in country by the communities. But actually, we need to be able to make the case that resilience is a wise investment. And we also need to support this marketplace that needs to evolve in adaptation and resilience investments, and some process of price discovery so that investors, whether they're governments, whether they're foundations, whether they are in country or whether they're global, they have some sense of value for money and what works, and frankly also what doesn't work. It's really important to hold up and look at what doesn't work and where money is being spent badly. And behind this also is our need, through that strong model that Race to Resilience is going to help us build, is the need to move the Daraja service. We always go in with the idea of a service, co-create a product and a service, and there's a partnership and network behind it, but it is a service. But we need to move that from Nairobi and Dar es Salaam to the secondary and tertiary cities. And as we look to other global geographies, again, India, 160 million plus residents of informal settlements in the 12 to 14 metropolitan areas. But what about the secondary and tertiary cities in India? We need that model. Second principle that we're going to maintain is the core axis is between people like Patricia and James. Patricia is an IPCC scientist. She's the chief meteorologist for the Kenya Meteorological Department. She is also in the negotiation team here. She's working deep at the coalface of the negotiations, as is her counterpart in Daraja from Dar es Salaam, Dr. Changa. So they are focal points for the IPCC. We want to maintain that access between Patricia and James throughout this process, moving forward into future COPs, because scientists like Patricia are looking at things like rising heat, and they are feeding that back into the system that we have designed in Nairobi so that it can adjust, it can adapt itself and provide new and useful information. And I think the third and final thing that is essential to our scale up is a partnership base. And that is where we have not just this key foundational partnership with Race to Resilience, but we have evolved partnerships with the Early Action Partnership. They are critical to helping us scale, and to other core strategic partners, Red Cross Climate Center, Cruise, the major early warning investment that came out of Paris, and then finally key networks, city networks such as ICLE, Global Cities Resilience Networks, and lastly, Sheila Patel was mentioned here. She's a high-level champion for the Race to Resilience. She is the co-founder of Slum Dwellers International, that federation of Slum Dwellers International across hundreds of cities that connects community-based organizations working in formal settlements is absolutely key to us. The goal will always be, it's not tech scaling, this is not a technology scale-up, this is a scale-up that hits that sweet spot between impact at scale and catalyzing locally led adaptation through the kind of local leadership that is evidenced by the work of Patricia and James. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Very, very inspiring. Thank you so much. Fantastic project. So now our next speaker is part of the Frontline Found Accelerator. They are working with partners to address the gap in grassroots-led funding mechanisms. Their vision in the next decade is to have a new financial architecture where communities and donors establish equitable and trusting relationships, holding each other accountable and share risks, and where significant investments is dedicated to grassroots-led climate and development funding that demonstrates effective, dignified, and just local action. So I'm pleased to welcome Claire Shakia, Director, Climate Change International for Environment and Development. Please join us here. I think it's good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm standing in for the Huari Commission and Slum Dwellers International because they couldn't either make it to Glasgow or they had to get their PCR in order to be able to return home this morning. So hopefully Suranjana will turn up before the end of this event for you to ask questions. I've been given a set of papers, a two-pager on this initiative. So anyone who wants to find out how they can be a supporter to this initiative, please come and get one of these off me. Are you going to ask me questions or shall I just talk about the idea?
No, I think the floor is yours. Please,
Okay.
Go ahead.
So this emerged from this work that Mark was just talking about around the locally led adaptation. We got asked at one point to look for what were the most transformational interventions that we could find that were considered sort of climate adaptation, supporting the protection of nature, land use, preventing land use change, or rehabilitating forests, and actually embedding carbon as they go. So we were asked to scout around, see what the things we could find were the most transformational. And as we were looking, we found that actually the most outstanding transformational interventions that we could find were in fact all grassroots-led, grassroots-owned initiatives across the world. We came up with this report, a group of my colleagues in IID, called the Frontier Fund. I can't remember what it's called actually, but it has Frontier Funds in the title. And we started talking to those organisations that had put these into place. And what we found was when a locally controlled, place-specific funding mechanism governed by its own constituency is in action, it's really influential on local government. It's really influential with national government, and it can speak up to global processes and begin to influence up there as well. So this led to a conversation between Huari Commission, STI, and a group of other of their allies, people like Tebteba, an Indigenous Peoples Network, CADPI, WeGo, Waste Pickers Alliance, youth networks. And they've been building this alliance and saying, what can we do collectively? Now, there are lots of these small, organised communities who have funding mechanisms, have a bank account, are organising saving committees, already exist in the world. What they're not all able to do is to talk to donors, talk to those who can give them more resources and help them become more effective. So from that became this idea of the Frontline Funds Accelerator, where these organised community federations start to work with each other, peer-to-peer learning, and bringing in support when it's needed, technical advice when it's needed from other partners, from other allies, to really build these grassroots-owned organisations. Now, this is, if you like, a perfect complement to what much of us spend a lot of our time thinking about, is how do we get state delivery mechanisms to work? But the thing is, when we're getting big states to say we're going to do more on climate action, if you have a change of government, you can see a really quick change in political ambition on climate, as we know from Trump, as we know from Bolsonaro. So this is one way of keeping governments on track, of holding governments to account, even when they may not want to, and making sure that that community-led approaches can continue. So locally led adaptation needs more of these types of community-led, community-owned, constituency-governed processes. But these types of organisations also find it really hard to attract donor support. So what we're doing under this accelerator, the first year ambition is to get 2 bilaterals on side and a couple of foundations, up to 5 foundations. So if you know anyone that might be interested in this, please let us know, and I can put you in touch with Sheila Patel, Suranjana Gupta, all of the amazing inspirational leaders that are part of this process. And I'm really sorry that they're not here to talk to you today.
Thank you so much, Claire. Very exciting. So next up, we have a video message from Tom Mitchell of Climate Kick. And if it's that, let me see. Okay, thank you so much for the note. So I think we have a video message from Tom Mitchell of Climate Kick. His team aims to provide comprehensive and end-to-end support infrastructure to help adaptation, entrepreneurs and startups to reach market fast, scale their solutions, and attract sufficient investment. Can we have the video, please?
Hello, I'm Tom Mitchell from Climate Kick. Climate Kick is an innovation agency focused on tackling climate change through innovation. And in the past, our focus has been on mitigation, but actually now we're very much focused on adaptation. And being part of the race to resilience is a fantastic opportunity for us to really challenge the way in which adaptation is working at the moment. And I think we all know that we've seen a lot of studies recently that says the majority of adaptation projects that we've supported have ended up in maladaptation. So the structure that we've got at the moment isn't working. We can pour more money into our international system, but if the projects themselves aren't delivering the impacts they need, we need a fresh approach. That's why Climate Kick has really been very keen to join Race to Resilience and indeed to be one of the transformations that can really create a much more systemic effect and give us the chance of a step change in resilience. So our big idea is to treat adaptation as an opportunity for business, for societal transformation and for real impact on the ground. And that's because we know the adaptation and resilience economy is growing very fast. It's already worth at very least $300 billion a year globally, and is clearly, with governments and businesses worried about their future resilience, going to be a bigger market of the future. And so what would it mean then to be able to put that adaptation economy at the forefront of industrial and economic development strategies locally, and really seize a slice of that adaptation economy to help with job creation, improved well-being, and indeed to be able to recover from COVID-19. And so practically what Climate Kick brings to this is our experience of place-based innovation cluster development, where the big advantages for places are being able to nurture lots of startup businesses and SMEs together, being known for something in the future adaptation economy, and of course see jobs and inward investment. And we really need to find ways to place much more private sector investment behind adaptation, because public money can't do it alone, but we need a new formula for moving away from projects to a much more structured, systemic approach of public and private working together to scale the adaptation solutions and creative design options for the future. So in practice, what we're doing as part of the Race to Resilience is building a big partnership that's going to allow us to build and test this at scale over a decade-long program. And so what we've been doing so far is to look at the ingredients that you need to build innovation clusters. And for that, that means ease of doing business. It means technical agencies working together with governments. It means there to be great skills and talent pools. It means there needs to be access to finance, to investment, and so on. And it also needs leadership locally to provide a directional economy, from ministers of economy or of industry or city leaders that say, we want that adaptation and resilience economy to be part of our future economic development strategy. So we've been looking globally at where that might be, and we've identified a long list of places in each of the 6 continents, and where we've got that long list to start really exploring where we can put that infrastructure in place to allow those innovation clusters to emerge. The other thing that we've been doing is launching an Adaptation and Resilience Innovation Challenge to get a sense of what that market is. Where is there real dynamics of startups and SMEs, and what are we seeing as some of the challenges that they face? The important element for us then is to be able to demonstrate that that adaptation economy is growing, but it also is an investment option, and it is one that can bring change locally. And so the next steps for us then are to start working with that long list of adaptation innovation clusters to see where we can really make a difference, and to identify maybe 6 or 8 places around the world within the next few months that we can really put that investment and infrastructure in place. And practically that means accelerator programs, it means skills programs, it means incubators, it means investor networks, it means kind of market-making dynamics that create a buzz, bringing together very diverse groups and demonstrating that a place can be a home to really an exciting adaptation economy and business environment. And it also means putting to work some of those innovations as a portfolio of connected actions to see how we can transform places into being much, much more resilient and thriving and being prosperous in a future climate. So we're trying to pair that sense of experimentation with also a really strong business culture and innovation culture. And that for us is a transformation that allows us to think about adaptation as an opportunity. It allows us to rethink the way international adaptation finance is channeled. And it's a way, of course, to support young people and businesses in the adaptation economy. And we know in the adaptation economy there are so many opportunities to bring innovation to bear on the resilience challenges we face. Just even some examples that have come through our Adaptation Innovation Challenge. So polymers that help to slow release water in drought conditions, or AI technologies that help us identify groundwater sources to deal with drought. Or where we've got solar installations that allow us to turn water in the air into water that we can drink. Or in the case of insurance and insurtech, the ability to insure credit guarantee schemes to give access to credit to the bottom billion for the first time to improve their soils and the yields and so on and make their farms more resilient. There are countless innovations that we can bring to bear on the resilience challenge, and we need many of them simultaneously to be acting together. This gives a great basis for the investment that we need, but it also is an exciting opportunity for our innovators to come to the table with some creative solutions. And I'd certainly like to thank all of the partners that have been working with us on this already. There's probably too many to mention here, but certainly to CDC Group, to Irish Aid, to GIZ, to the Bank of America Foundation, to UNIDO, to UNDP, and to many others that are working with us on this idea. And then the other component of this, of course, is we need huge numbers of partners on the ground that are acting as part of this whole infrastructure that you need to build climate innovation clusters. And that's local accelerators, social impact incubators, and many of the organizations that we've been working with to deliver our Climate Launchpad and Adaptation and Resilience Innovation Challenge already across 14 countries in Africa and in Asia. This is going to take many, many more. And whether you're an organization from private sector or public sector involved in innovation or not, we'd love to hear from you if this idea appeals to you. And of course, we need funding to be able to take this to the scale that it now needs. We've got an opportunity for transformation, but we need to seize it fast, and we need to really rethink the way in which we're using international climate adaptation finance to maximum effect. And we think this transformation is a place to put that money. And also, if you're a leader in a country government or in a city or in a region where you think that putting adaptation innovation at the very heart of your industrial or economic strategy is something that you can achieve, and also you've got some of the ingredients for success, we'd love to hear with you, because we want to work with you and to create that global network of adaptation innovation clusters.
Thank you, Tom. Great work with the Climate Kick. Our next partner, yes, good. Thank you. Our next partner is also going to speak through a video. BFA Global has brought together PayPal and other partners on a task force to build and implement a digital finance for climate resilience framework. I know I don't need to tell this audience that the most exposed population are the ones who lack the resources to overcome the challenges posed by climate change. Let's hear from Sri Shivananda and David Delcer on how they're bringing about an ecosystem change to work on fintech solutions that will help communities. Please play the video.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. My name is David Delcer. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for BFA Global, an impact innovation firm that usually collaborates with networks of partners to support low-income and excluded populations. We normally seek to increase their financial well-being, their financial inclusion, and over the last few years, it's become pretty clear in our work that climate change is already boosting poverty, already disrupting financial health, and that we have the dark prospect of perhaps climate change destroying all the progress we've done over the last decades. So we start asking ourselves the question, the important question of what can modern digital finance do to combat climate change, to foster climate adaptation and climate resilience? That's easy to ask, not so easy to answer. So what we did is we joined the task force of experts from both the financial inclusion as well as the climate change world, including PayPal, World Resources Institute, the World Bank, CGAP, and Verde and Casa Alliance, as well as the Race to Resilience. And this task force and the activity, the initiative that has generated is one of the transformations under the Race to Resilience umbrella. So thanks a lot to Nidhi and Jorge and the rest of the R2R team for their trust and their support. But going back to the task force, we began exploring the role and the potential for the tools we've developed in the past, right? Inclusive fintech, digital financial technologies to be turned towards the climate crisis. And in the process, we learned two things. First thing, there are already solutions that exist that can improve the climate resilience of low-income and vulnerable populations globally. But these tools, or rather these populations, face barriers to accessing these tools, to making them affordable and something they can actually incorporate in their lives. So unfortunately, these solutions are not scaling because of that. And we believe fintech could help overcome these barriers through increasing, making it easier, for example, to pay for the solution or to borrow in order to buy it. And the second thing we also learned is that sadly, even though there's lots of potential in this intersection of digital finance and climate resilience, there's very little activity innovating, figuring out what works and what doesn't work within that space, right? And we believe that's because there's just not enough support, enough financial support, enough intellectual support for that exploration. So what we decided at the task force was to catalyze an innovation ecosystem that can build the scale and breadth of the solutions that will address climate resilience with these digital finance technologies. In order to do this, the first step was to learn from each other. So we brought together over 50 organizations in a collaborative process, essentially crowdsourcing wisdom from all of them to then distill and determine what is the best way to launch such an ecosystem. We completed a few seminal knowledge products like a solution space map and an investment thesis brief with 8 investment theses, just to make tangible the types of solutions that we're talking about here. And we also completed a pretty serious round of user research with climate vulnerable populations in South Africa, Nigeria, and Mexico to better understand how they are experiencing climate change themselves, right? And what solutions they're already using to build that resilience. We think it's critical to fight climate change that we maintain the stories and voices from those on the front lines, from those suffering the most, to keep them front and center, right, as we design other things or try to act in that space. We actually have an event later today to hear more about that research for those that are interested. And after we did all this talking and all this thinking and all this writing, we published a website, which you can find on df4cr.org, which DF4CR means Digital Finance for Climate Resilience. And you can find all the content that I was describing posted there. Is public. It's a public good website for anyone to hopefully learn from it. We also set some goals of how we think this ecosystem might make a difference. And we basically challenge ourselves to reaching by 2030, 1 billion people with these types of solutions that are hybrid between fintech and climate resilience, and to catalyze up to $25 billion of investment going into the space every year at that point. That's far off. In the interim, as the first step, what we would like to do is accelerate 100 startups that are already out there. And we know there's not that many, so that's quite a challenging number. And because there are not so many, we also would love to launch 100 startups more. And of course, we'd like to have this ecosystem participate in all of this activity and become more of a tighter, stronger coalition for change. And at this point, I'm just going to cut to a video from Sri Shinavanda, who's the CTO of PayPal. PayPal is a member of our task force and was providing the bulk of the financial support for the effort, for the collective initiative. You will hear from him why PayPal is interested in this work and how they see their potential on climate, their potential impact on climate change. Thank you very much.
The Digital Finance for Climate Resilience Task Force was made possible by the financial support from PayPal and convened experts from Better Than Cash Alliance, a consultative group assisting the poor, the team at United Nations Race to Resilience, and the World Resource Institute to explore the opportunity for digital finance innovations to power the greater climate resilience around the world. The framework for action outlines the need for $25 billion in investment to flow into this ecosystem by 2030, with the potential to benefit almost 1 billion people. It also details tangible steps that innovators, investors, regulators, and policymakers, along with an ecosystem of enablers, can take now and in the future to accelerate the ecosystem's growth. Climate resilient solutions exist, but vulnerable people face affordability, accessibility, and appropriateness barriers in accessing them. Digital finance enablers can help them to overcome these barriers and facilitate access to products and services that help people anticipate, adapt to, and build resilience against the negative impacts of climate change. We call the solution space Digital Finance for Climate Resilience. I'll offer two examples to illustrate how digital finance can enable climate resilience. First, digitally enabled donations and aid payments can respond rapidly to climate-related extreme weather events. For example, in response to an unprecedented flooding event that impacted hundreds of thousands of people in Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg earlier this year, PayPal helped to mobilize more than $1.8 million in charitable donations via the PayPal Giving Fund. Such rapid response funding is critical to helping people avoid negative actions, like selling off their assets or accumulating expensive debt. And there's much more potential for rapid response to extreme weather and natural disasters, like enabling disaster remittances and aid payments directly to those that are impacted. Second, the digital payments enabled carbon marketplaces have potential to help scale global restoration work and curbing greenhouse gas emissions. All this while creating clean jobs and economic activity in rural and low-income communities. Mobile payment infrastructure can enable more people in more locations to capture the income opportunities offered by the global carbon credit markets. The action framework published by the Digital Finance for Climate Resilience Task Force describes many other use cases and examples of innovation in a rapidly emerging field. For example, the Catalyst Fund, a global accelerator of inclusive fintech innovators, is applying the framework to specifically focus on prototyping digital finance solutions for climate resilience of low-income and underserved populations. These are the people PayPal aims to serve through Financial Health Mission. PayPal is a supporter of the Catalyst Fund, and we are eager to learn from the innovative startups that are at the forefront of developing new tools and technologies that are focused on the intersection of financial inclusion and climate resilience. The Digital Finance for Climate Resilience framework will serve as a keystone evidence-based knowledge resource to inform PayPal's strategy for advancing climate justice and resilience, both within our own organization and for the benefit of all stakeholders. We look forward to sharing further updates as we apply the framework and utilize the recommendations to inform our investment priorities, our product roadmap, and our overall approach to stakeholder capitalism. We hope that the framework itself and the consultative process that led up to the framework's creation will maintain and support the expansion of new innovation ecosystem at the intersection of digital finance and climate resilience.
Thank you for listening to that video. I hope you found it as exciting as I did. I just wanted to wrap up by summarizing and saying that our transformation is the application of digital finance to climate resilience technologies, products, and services that we believe will improve the resilience to climate change of low-income, excluded, and vulnerable populations globally. We believe that digital finance and these climate resilience solutions can reach up to 1 billion people by 2030. And we're very excited to continue the momentum and progress that we've seen this year into 2022 and beyond. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Sri and David. Excited to hear an excellent about the use of fintech in climate resilience. So let me now welcome Roger van den Berg to the podium, please. To tell us about the work 1,000 Cities Adapt Now is currently doing and the vision they have for the future. Our world's growing population, especially in urban centers, requires us to focus on empowering cities and the resources needed to build resilience for its people. Over to you, Roger. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, and thank you for organizing this, and thanks for the high-level champions to amplifying, the importance of creating climate resilience. The race to resilience. So thanks for Gonzalo, thanks for Nigel for all the work done. It's direly needed, but and I think we're at the beginning of a journey that needs to accelerate and scale very fast. Because I'm excited about seeing what actions are being taken and the progress that is made in cities. But resilience in cities is definitely not central to this COP. So let's aim for the next COP to make it central at scale, and these transformations can help. I'm going to say something about a transformation that we are driving together with close partners. So I'm Roger from World Resources Institute. I'm leading the Ross Center for Sustainable Cities. And we're working on this and we're developing this together with the Global Center on Adaptation, Resilient Cities Network, and UN Habitat, with close partners, Deltares and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands. Next one, please. So in January at the Climate Adaptation Summit, we launched the initiative 1,000 Cities Adapt Now. It was announced by Ban Ki-moon, who was at that time co-chair of the Global Commission of Adaptation. And it was launched by the mayor of Miami, Mr. Suarez, the mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, the mayor of Rotterdam, Ahmed Abu Taleb, the Global Center of Adaptation and the World Resources Institute. It brought together the power of working together in cities, working together with cities, and as such it was endorsed by 20 cities that can help us, this initiative, to scale and influence across different continents. Next, please. So at the Climate Adaptation Summit, we had the launch. Our joint statement was released, and we aim with this coalition to have an impact in 1,000 cities. And that's a lot, but it is possible. What we see, the cities' work is very scattered, it's very complex, includes a lot of actors, and a couple of the organizations that have a long reach in these cities and that have deep dive engagement in these cities are the partners among us. So this is a collaborative effort to scale 1,000 cities by 2030, focusing on 4 important things: implementation of nature-based solutions, building urban water resilience, create specific solutions for the vulnerable and the urban poor, and a strong capacity building program. So we do that in this alliance. Next, please. So what are our 5 principles for accelerating and scaling urban climate adaptation? First of all, priority on the poor and the most vulnerable. So equity should be at the center of everything we do. And within our respective organizations, we have different tools to do that. I think at the moment now at the Jeff Pavilion, we are explaining our 7 transformations for equitable development in cities based on a report that we just released with the World Resources Institute. But each of the organizations has these opportunities to bring analytics to the table and actions in cities. The second is that important focus to scale water resilient cities and nature-based solutions, specific tasks in cities. So we heard a lot about nature. This definitely is the Nature COP. Nature-based solutions in cities is a different type of story requires different type of actions and expertise. So scale water resilient cities and nature-based solutions. Third is to advance coordinated leadership for finance. So more devolved funding we need to have in place in order a devolved mandate for finance at the city level. Otherwise, we never can implement. So there's an opportunity to bring cities together and to work with national authorities on better and bigger transfer of finance and help cities to access more finance that sits in the different global funds and the multilateral financial institutions. Scaling we can only do if cities are going to do it themselves, so that peer-to-peer learning is really important. We're looking now at how we can develop that within this collaborative effort in a kind of hub and spoke model, where cities help other cities to kind of improve climate action and resilience in their cities. And last but not least, this all works if with these organizations and our counterparts we can work together and create synergies. And I think the effort and the progress that we've made over the last few months really illustrates that, you know, collaborative analytical power and this broad range of geographies that we had at hand with both technical and political entry points is the opportunity to scale. Next, please. So as an alliance, we are having deep engagement in 490 cities. We did a very in-depth analysis of our geographies, the geographies within Resilient Cities Network, UN Habitat, World Resources Institute, and the Global Center of Adaptation, Deltares, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So this is what we are covering currently with our actions of these organizations in these cities. So it's a very strong, this is not a network. We have a network among us, but this is a very strong overlap of geographies. And what we've did, and this is where we have to prioritize action where it's most needed and where the synergies between our organizations are biggest. So next, please. So this is the analysis that we did, prioritizing where we will work and where each of the organizations is active in developing project, providing technical assistance, capacity building, or having a serious political entry point and leverage in the cities. So this is where we work and where we are active as organizations, but it's a demand-driven approach. So don't get me wrong, because each of the organizations works on the ground on real stuff. So next, please. So we did analysis on where the demand is high. And this is something that we are refining right now. We're quite far in this process. This is a map showing prioritization based on heat. And here we looked at a 10% or greater probability of 10 more days at 35 degrees or hotter, and annual maximum temperatures of 80 degrees and hotter. So this gives you vulnerabilities across the combined geographies. Next, please. So where we are prioritizing based on flooding, looking at a 10% or greater probability of 20 centimeters more of inundation in 2035 under one of the specific scenarios. So that's another vulnerability. Next, please. And then we're looking at prioritizing based on drought, looking at 10% or greater probability of a 30 or more 5-day dry spell, or a dry spell of 60 or more days. So I'm being specific. Why I mention these specific metrics, because we talk about metrics here in the race to resilience, and specifically in the city's race to resilience, and this can be extremely valuable to drive and help the race to resilience to develop that metrics and to measure how many people are impacted with these, looking at these hazards and these overlapping. When you overlay this data, you get a very good sense and understanding of where the urge and the need is highest. Next, please. So, besides bringing our organizations together with that large cohort of almost 500 cities, we are driving change and projects on the ground as we speak, with a couple of key projects that are currently ongoing and that still have space and opportunities to bring other cities in, or that can be an opportunity to capacitate other cities as part of this bigger project. So first of all, a data-driven approach to climate adaptation that we are developing with GCOM, which is a knowledge partner to 1,000 Cities Adapt Now, in which we now testing a great analytical tool that show municipalities where their assets and services are under threat. So it shows exposure to the vulnerabilities that I just showed you in our analysis. So the vulnerability to the exposure to heat, the exposure to flooding, the exposure to drought, the exposure. So we overlaid the different exposures and then looked at the different assets that under the city's management and how they are exposed to it. Very helpful tool for city leaders to take decision on, for example, where to plant trees in order to mitigate heat. So that's in development. Coming year we are piloted in a couple of cities, and the good thing is that you can do this analysis based on globally available data. So it means that by next COP we should be able to cover this and provide this for all cities in the world. Next, please. Then a second project is a big and a scaled opportunity for capacity building. This is driven by the Global Center of Adaptation through our Cities Adaptation Accelerator, starting already with the first cohort of cities, where we support cities, where the GCA and partners support cities in developing their climate action plans in a rapid way, and also in providing that peer-to-peer learning to capacitate other cities on how to do that better, faster, and with a clear focus on action. Next, please. Third important component of action on the ground is led by UN Habitat. It's the Rise Up proposition, where in cities actually the community-led adaptation is central to building resilience. So this is already long-term in the making, tested and developed now within a few cities, aiming at reaching 100 cities in which this kind of vulnerability communities come at the core, at the heart of actual action. This is led by UN Habitat, flagship project of UN Habitat. Next, please. And then the project led by World Resources Institute and Resilient Cities Network is really on linking the finance and a coalition of partners to underground action. This is the Urban Water Resilience Initiative in Africa, in which we all already working in 3 countries in 6 cities, and for which we are now developing and at COP27 launching a catalytic fund to expand scale water resilience actions in these cities, based on a methodology, based on a partnership, and based on a fast-track opportunity to disseminate resources into the city space. And that's very important. If you would ask me what's the biggest challenge right now, is to make sure that cities have access to finance, so that catalytic fund is going to play an important role of scaling climate action in cities. In this case, focus on Africa. I'm almost done. Or I think this is last. So where are we looking at right now? You see, so we have these actions on the ground that expand. We have this alliance, and we have our common analysis in order to identify where the needs are highest. So we will work together with the Race to Resilience, looking at COP27. COP27 will be in Africa, will and should be the adaptation COP. So, and in this case, I think everyone here in the audience has a role to fulfill to make sure that it is going to happen, and that we can support with real things happening on the ground. So what are we going to do? We strengthen this kind of coordinated approach that I explained. We're keep advancing the work in cities. This is not stopping. This is not a high-level kind of opportunity. We're doing that work in the cities. Important tool is test and consolidate the data platform that is accessible for all cities and city leaders, to launch that catalytic fund that I was talking about. And we have a very specific kind of opportunity in the different projects that I showed to galvanize financing and implementing partners in Africa. So I hope we can bring this to bear together with you. and also rely, of course, on the Race to Resilience partners to help us do that. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Roger. Round of applause for that fantastic initiative. Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. So now I'm pleased to welcome to the podium Shasri from CCRI. Please join us. Their vision is a global financial industry and system in which key initiatives...
You've got the wrong one. I'm sorry. It's the Coalition for Climate.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Shasri, Quamber Hill, Program and Partnerships for Lead Coalition for Climate Resilient Investments. Welcome.
Thank you.
And the floor is yours.
Hello?
Yeah,
yep, there we go. Thank you, Natalia. And let me just start by saying thank you for allowing me to share CCRI's story here today. It's been really inspiring to hear about the work of all of the fantastic partners in the Race to Resilience Transformation scheme, and I'm really excited to talk about the Coalition for Climate Resilient Investment. So given the audience, I don't think I need to convince any of you why resilience is important. We all know that even if all of our mitigation efforts are successful, there are still severe climate impacts already locked into the system that we urgently need to address. So the Coalition for Climate Resilient Investment, or CCRI, was launched at the UN Climate Action Summit in 2019 as a private sector-led global initiative and with the purpose of addressing what we believe is a current mispricing of physical climate risk in investment decision-making. So starting with 27 members in 2019, we're very proud today to include 120 members, including private and international financial institutions, technical experts, academics, think tanks, governments, and asset owners and managers, representing close to $20 trillion in assets under advisement, all of whom are committed to advancing resilient investments globally. So CCRI's purpose is very much, well, we believe that the way that investments take into account climate risks is not really effective. It's not efficient, and it's not appropriately understanding the risk and the costs involved, especially when it comes to infrastructure. We're seeing increasing instances of severe weather, climate impacts, flooding, drought, wildfires, you name it. Yet the way investors take into account these risks when it comes to the design, the planning, the financing of investments is largely unchanged for several decades. At CCRI, we believe that the way to address these impacts is, one, through science, so giving investors the tools, the data, the modeling that they need to properly understand the cost of the risk involved. Two, through finance, so rewarding investments that have resilience baked in. And three, incentives, so carefully planned interventions, regulations that gently but firmly guide the system as a whole towards resilience. So science plus finance plus incentives leading to action. And that's our ultimate aim, is to mobilize capital towards resilience for real impact and to strengthen the system and as individual assets as a whole. So CCRI's work very much focuses on two key areas. First, at the sort of national planning level, we work in the system, so we work with governments to build systemic resilience. And then at the individual asset levels, working at the design, structuring, and valuation of assets. And we've had since our launch in 2019, we've made really good progress, and we're bringing real practical tools and solutions to the table. So just earlier this week, we were delighted to launch the Systemic Resilient Assessment Tool, which we have built in partnership with the Government of Jamaica and the University of Oxford. and supported by the UK's FCDO and the Green Climate Fund, so a real collective effort there. And the tool really allows users to understand where in a network of in a series of infrastructure networks, there are hotspots that are most at risk, and therefore direct investments effectively so that every single dollar that is being invested into the system is maximizing resilience and strengthening that system as a whole. This work is part of our Systemic Resilience Forum, which counts within its fold 50 members, again spanning across the public and private sector. And our idea is over the course of 2022-23 to scale and refine these solutions across at least 5 additional jurisdictions, taking very much a needs-based approach. So we will be working closely with governments and with local governments to ensure that all the tools are focusing on the needs on the ground there. And then as part of the Systemic Resilience Forum, we'll also be developing a set of metrics that will be able to assess how well a country or a city has been able to apply resilient actions and then to reflect these, whether that is through the use of the tool that CCRI is developing or some of the many other wonderful tools and solutions that are being developed with our partner initiatives. Then moving from that national level down to the individual asset level, as part of our asset design and structuring work, we were really pleased to launch at this very stage last week the PCRM, which is the Physical Climate Risk Assessment methodology of CCRI. This has been developed in partnership with Mott MacDonald and 27 other member institutions. And this is really looking at how resilience is integrated into the cash flows and the cash flow modeling of investments. Again, this tool was developed using real data from 5 case studies. And we will be looking over the next 2 years to expand this, bringing in more data from more case studies, and ultimately leading to a principles of resilient investment. So what we're really trying to do here, I'm trying to give you an idea of, is a toolbox of practical tools and solutions that investors and decision makers have at their disposal to make sure that they are baking in that resilience at every stage of the investment decision-making process. It's been really heartening to see that we've had a lot of recognition for the work that we're developing. So, for example, in September, the California's Risk Disclosure Advisory Committee released a report in which they advised the use of CCRS tools as part of the toolkit for resilient investments for those who are interested in investing in the state of California. So I think I'm running out of time. I'll wrap up. So our ultimate aim, our ultimate aim with all of this is really to mobilize capital, and we're already seeing CCRI move into that capital kind of financing phase of its work. We'll be looking to create a League of Investment Funds for Resilience, and this will be a series of capital or investment vehicles that can really help to facilitate the application of resilient tools, particularly CCRI's tools, across a number of regions globally. And our commitment is already, by the time we reconvene at COP27 in a year's time, to have raised $5 billion for the purpose of this League of Investment Funds. And others have mentioned this as well, it's really heartening at this COP to see resilience finally taking its due place on the center stage next to mitigation. At CCRI, we really believe in a future where incidentally, we don't talk about resilient investments because all investments by default have resilience baked in. That's very much our vision for a future and where we hope to go in collaboration with our members and with similar partner initiatives such as those involved in the Race to Resilience. So I very much look forward to continuing that journey. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to
Thank you. A round of applause for Shazri. Thank you, Shazri. Delighted to hear about that. So we have looked at financial institutions, but now I think it is time to discuss, I've nearly shared with notes here, if these solutions are working for everyone. If not, what do we need to do to make climate finance just, equitable, and gender sensitive? So I would like to welcome David and Anya. I think they were going to call into the room. Oh, no, they're here. Okay, great. Welcome them. Welcome.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. It should have been Tajine Jeffrey speaking, but sadly she had a family emergency, and you have myself and Anya, David Howlett from the Champions team. And Anya, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. My name is Anya Nivrazel, and I'm leading on the metrics for the Race to Resilience campaign.
Yeah. And the first thing I'm going to say is I'm another man in a suit talking about gender. So I'm going to take my suit off.
Just the jacket, I hope.
No, I'm not doing the full Monty, don't worry. Just rub it out. And also I want to make it a bit more interactive. I've got the goal of Race to Resilience to make 4 billion people more resilient. So this is a really simple quiz. How many of those 4 billion are women and girls? I'm going to give you 3 answers. Is it A, 1.96 billion, or is it 2 billion, or is it C, 2.04 billion? So who thinks it's A, 1.96 billion will be women and girls? Of the 4 billion people, how many will be women and girls? Is it 1.96 billion, 2 billion, or 2.04 billion? So who thinks... So you all think it's 3? Well, in 2017, it was 1.96 billion. So there were fewer women and girls than men. What is interesting, in some countries, Russia, there's about 56% are women. I think that's because men like me die off earlier because they're drinking too much vodka or something like that. Rather telling, in some countries, in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, much fewer women than men. Anyway, so that's all about saying that actually, if Gonzalo was here or Nigel was here, hopefully we might have a female champion one day, is that we must address the issue of gender. And gender is not just about women and girls, it's about men, but my daughter would say there's probably lots of different genders as well. So it's really important, I think. It's also really important that we talk about climate justice and equity. I was just listening to the transformations, and quite a few seem to be really quite gender blind. Okay, so I think one of the things I was talking to Tajine this morning is that this transformation, we're not talking about small things. We should be talking about that all the partners should be addressing issues of gender and equity, whether you call it climate justice or not. So it's really, really important. I've now got a partner in crime, so I'm going to ask her a few questions. I think she knows what they're coming. I might throw some curveballs in as well towards the end. But Anya, you have been working with Tajine Jeffrey. Also, I think you had your week made because you actually met Mary Robinson in person. And yesterday, what did Mary launch? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, David. And Tajine would love to be here to launch this or to speak to you about what was launched yesterday. So she launched yesterday with Mary Robinson a new platform, and it's for advancing equitable, just, and gender-sensitive climate finance. And this is really needed. As you said, women and girls are not at all considered routinely when providing climate finance, and it's really key that this kind of gender blindness to climate finance is stopped, and that we start considering more gender. When
so we don't have to worry about other finance. Is it just climate finance? Or?
Well, this platform is just about climate finance, the one that was launched.
Yeah. But I think we were also talking to some of the asset managers and you know, I think CCRI all finance, I think. But if we can use climate finance to be the leader on it, I think that would be great. Can you tell us a bit about the sort of pillars and what it's going to be doing? And
yeah, so
I know we're all reading. We'll give you some of these later. But,
yeah, we can give you some more detail on this later. But yes, they plan to embody 5 aspects of gender-sensitive climate finance in all of their projects. So these are inclusivity, voice, participation, representation, and most importantly of all, improved flows of finance. So they're the kind of like key things that they want to embody, but then they have some kind of approaches that they've built into 3 pillars. And these are, they want to identify bottlenecks and challenges for gender-sensitive climate finance. They are planning to identify interventions for health, economic and social recovery. And then they're also planning to co-design, implement interventions from the grassroots and not from the top down.
Okay, can you tell us who's involved?
Sure, yeah. So the Glasgow Caledonian University Centre for Climate Justice, and then there's also the African Development Bank and the Pan-African Climate Justice Initiative Alliance, as well. They have all come together to launch this platform.
Yeah, and I think it's open to many others if they want to join. The curveball question now.
Looking forward to it, David.
Yeah, it's not too difficult. You know, you've been working with Paulina and others on the metrics framework.
Yeah.
Are you just counting people, or are you also looking at the impact on women and girls of what the partners are doing?
We are also looking at the impact of women and girls, and we've asked all of our partners to tell us wherever possible, you know, which type of people are you impacting, and that includes what gender, it includes where they are there any people from marginalized communities or vulnerable people, so we want to make sure that we're not just counting without knowing who are these people that we are actually collecting metrics about.
Great, I think
we are getting close to the time. Thank you so much for your participation. I'm sorry, we're getting a couple of other wonderful speakers. Getting the clothing, thank you. So I think I'm going to just skip a few remarks here, and I'm just going to probably jump into to listen to Nate Matthews, who from the Global Resilient Partnership. So I think he is with us through a video, so we will love to see that play. He is CEO of Global Resilient Partnership.
Hello everyone, my name is Nathaniel Matthews, and I'm the CEO of the Global Resilience Partnership. And I'm here today to talk about the Resilience Knowledge Coalition that is co-hosted by the Global Resilience Partnership, South-South-North, the Climate Development Knowledge Network, the International Center for Climate Change and Development, and the Least Developed Countries University Consortium on Climate Change. We are thrilled that the Resilience Knowledge Coalition is a transformation partner for the race to resilience. Our purpose with the coalition is getting the best knowledge and practice on resilience used to shape policies, plans, and investments to deliver a resilient future. The coalition is best thought of as a network of networks that connects existing initiatives and builds on their successes through a systemic approach so that they can become greater than the sum of their parts. There is now a growing wealth of knowledge and evidence on best practice in resilience generated from a wide range of initiatives. Each of these networks has its lessons, evidence, and technical expertise that would benefit from knowledge brokering between networks that puts their knowledge into use to deliver a resilient future. This is the gap the Resilience Knowledge Coalition aims to address through providing access to knowledge, expertise, energy, innovation, and collaborative learning across a wide range of initiatives. The coalition plays an active role in sharing information and knowledge on resilience programming, policy, and investments with its members. The coalition has 3 functions: collaborate, connect, and apply. These functions are interconnected. For instance, members can engage in peer learning under Collaborate and can interact on virtual platforms under Connect that benefit from incubation and MEL support under Apply. And at the same time, each has specific objectives and activities. Collaborate function envisions to form a community of practice for putting resilience knowledge into use through peer-to-peer learning, networking, and capacity exchange. Connect knowledge needs to be shared and exchanged to improve and grow successful activities. A knowledge management and curation system, the Resilience platform, has been created under this function that will link dynamically with other various knowledge management systems. The apply function creates avenues for resilience programming through connecting evidence-based solutions with investments, testing and scaling opportunities, as well as providing MEL support during the process of prototyping, scaling, and testing. The coalition is designed to break the model of past knowledge broker initiatives that have been top-down. It does this through the governance structure and processes which are co-created by coalition members. Currently, the coalition has over 450 members from across 100 organizations. Initiatives such as Voices from the Frontline, Catalytic Grants, South-to-South Resilience Academies, and the Global South Talent Pool are all critical in recognizing the expertise from the Global South and bringing them to the fore, along with grassroots voices. These initiatives foster peer-to-peer learning, networking, and capacity exchanges through stories that drive climate action in keeping with the principles of locally led adaptation. This role of the coalition as a facilitator of knowledge into action has been demonstrated by its role as a cross-cutting champion for knowledge at the COP26 Resilience Hub. The coalition is also focusing on resilience measurement and evaluation as a knowledge partner, and it has sought to build capacities on resilient measurement using the Race to Resilience metrics framework for professionals in the Global South. The Global Resilience Partnership is proud to be a part of this. We are uniquely positioned to co-lead this initiative as a consortium of over 60 partners working together to surface and scale innovation, share and advance knowledge, and influence policy towards a more resilient world. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Nathaniel, for your leadership. Our next speaker is a partner of the Race to Resilience campaign, delivering on metrics. But they are today to speak about a database of project innovations, much like the ones you have heard about from the partners delivering on transformations. They're pushing boundaries and promoting best practices. Let's hear from Savina. Welcome. Savina Carluccio, Chartered Civil Engineer.
Great. Thank you, Natalia, and thank you for having me today. So I'll be talking about the Race to Resilience of the International Coalition for Sustainable Infrastructure, or ICSI for short, a lot easier to say. So our initiative is about mobilizing the engineering community to build and enhance the climate resilience of infrastructure through the work that they do. So it's got a huge potential to deliver change at scale because infrastructure is the backbone of thriving societies and cities. So our pledge is that we will improve the climate resilience of over 500 million people in vulnerable and frontline communities, which amounts to almost a fourth of the overall target for the Race to Resilience. So, but rather than feeling daunting about this, we just actually feel quite galvanized by the opportunity to have such a big contribution. So ICSI is well placed to deliver this transformative change because we are quickly becoming the global movement for engineering action. So through the American Society of Civil Engineers and the UK Institution of Civil Engineers that are founding members of ICSI, we have access to the biggest network of engineers in the world. So we can reach out to 200,000 engineers in over 175 countries. And because of this, we got this unparalleled opportunity to catalyze the engineering community towards a global agenda for climate action and resilience building. So let me just touch upon why I think engineers really are well placed to deliver this kind of transformative change. So engineers, first of all, engineers have got this crucial role to play in responding to climate crisis. They hold the technical expertise and they've got access to solutions. Second, engineers are widely trusted by the public. So engineering community is well positioned to make an impact that is beyond their own industry and to influence policy and planning to become leaders on climate action. Third, engineering challenges are disproportionately spread across the globe, so we need really a global movement to address this. And fourth, there is an imbalance of science and engineering capacity across geographies, so we're missing engineers where we need them the most. So for example, we need 10 million engineers in Africa alone in the next 30 years in order to stay within the 1.5 degrees goal. However, engineers cannot really do this on their own. And so ICSI theories of change is to bring together three critical group of players under this collective vision. So first group is the cities and the infrastructure owners and operators, that are those with the demand, and they have the decision-making power. The second group is the engineering associations, that are those with the technical expertise in developing guidance and standards and access to this global pool of engineers. And the third group is the engineering private sector organizations that can do the lifting and shifting. They've got access to money, and they can deliver the projects at scale and at pace. So ICSI will mobilize these groups through advocacy, thought leadership, and knowledge creation and curation, as well as delivering demonstrator projects. So what are we doing to actually deliver this transformative change? We are seeking strategic partnership and deep collaboration. So from the different presentations I've heard today, I've already identified at least 4 different initiatives that I really want to talk to, and so we can amplify our own respective impacts, and we can smash those targets, not just reach them by 2030. So, for example, we are working closely with the Global Covenant of Mayors. Again, another initiative was talking about the Global Covenant of Mayors, and so to get access to cities. So by the end of 2022, we've committed to roll out our flagship knowledge resource, Infrastructure Pathways, through 3 main cities in Africa and Southeast Asia, so that we can lock in good choices for climate-resilient infrastructure, impacting over 5 million people. So let me just tell you a little bit more about Infrastructure Pathways as a platform, as a key enabler for transformative change. So it was launched earlier this week, and its development has been led by the Resilient Shift in partnership with Arab. Infrastructure Pathways brings clarity and consistency in a landscape that is otherwise quite confused and fragmented of existing guidance, tools, and standards. And so it does that by organizing and linking and distilling the knowledge in a way that is actionable and is directed to different practitioners at each stage of the life cycle of infrastructure. But what is exciting about this, and what I'm excited about, is that an end-to-end resource. It covers the whole life cycle of infrastructure, and it aims to connect the different practitioners. We tend to work in silos. We've been just doing this for too long, and we need to really change this. And this needs to be a transformation. So it's like being on a relay race. You need to pass the baton of resilience to the next practitioner down, or the whole team will lose out. So and I don't know how I'm doing with time, but we're a little tight, right? I thought we were going to be a little tight. So I think I want to just focus on a couple more points. And then, give you an example for how a city leader might want to use this resource, Infrastructure Pathways. So they might be using it to better understand climate risk and vulnerabilities. And I think, there is a barrier there about communication. Not everyone really understands fully what the climate impacts are. To use the Infrastructure Pathways framework to really focus attention on what matters for embedding resilience, and also to use that resource to help prioritize those projects that are shovel-worthy rather than shovel-ready, and to take that life cycle approach that then ensures that adaptation is built into the infrastructure projects. So what we're going to do is we have got plans to start engaging with city leaders from spring 2022, and we will do that through the Institution of Civil Engineers Brunel Lecture Series. So we've got 6 regional events planned over 18 months, convening engineers and high-profile city leaders across the globe to actually start talking about specific local issues with due to climate change, and then using that opportunity to share that knowledge, share that best practice, and resources such as Infrastructure Pathways. To conclude, so we've got a vision for 2030, and that vision is that the engineering community is actually a lot more involved in these conversations. We just think we want to be there, and we want to help making those decisions to lock in climate resilience and adaptation in infrastructure development. And we think by 2030 we will have reached and smashed that target of 500 million people. And it is not just utopia, and I really do think it's within reach, and we can make it a reality through deep collaboration and action. So I welcome other partner initiatives to talk to me later on today.
Thank you, Savina. Wonderful. Very optimistic. I'm with you. So our next and final speaker for the event today is Paulina Alduzzi, assistant professor at the Department of Environmental Science and Natural Resources, University of Chile. Paulina, welcome. Do you want to join us here, please? Paulina is the resilience in-house transformation expert, has spent a great deal of her time researching and writing about about this concept, and it's now supporting the team, built on the work along with her team from the Center for Climate and Resilience Research. Over to you, Paulina.
Oh, thank
the floor
you
is
very
yours.
much. So first of all, I would like to thank all our partners. You all have very inspiring initiatives, and we are really, really happy from the Race to Resilience to have you in our family. So I would like to start for that. Thank you to all of you. And I was asked to give some final remarks. So I'm going to talk about some things that emerged from what you presented. So I think one of the key things that you mentioned, that this is one of the important points, is to be local lead adaptation, grassroots initiatives. So working with local people. That is one of the things that is a transversal aspect that you mentioned in your initiatives. Another things that come across all initiatives was about was about equity, was about vulnerable people, poverty, and gender. So that is also part of transformation. Then somebody mentioned to that, and I really like it, adaptation like an opportunity. Let's try to see what is coming to us in a very, scary way. Let's try to see it positively, and let's try to see it like an opportunity. Also, transformation is about innovation, thinking differently, doing different, and more than just incremental change. Then it's about collective actions and collaboration. It's about integrating science. That is a very good point too. And also, so they are the main things that arise from what you presented. So our work just began, so we have so much to do, and we are so happy to do it. And now for ending, we're going to see a video of a project. And this project, I just want to take 1 minute only to explain what is the video about. This project is about a community that traveled to the future and come back with impetus to transform the world through transforming themselves. So, and also how a team of artists and researchers help them to navigate this process. And for that, in that team, we recognize that knowledge is important, all type of knowledge. So they walk to the future and they see two futures, one where is no behavior change in humanity, and the other one that is a transformed future where we care about the environment. So they chose the second future, and for that, to get to a future where it's transformed in a positive way, we use what we call the future scenarios. So in that future, they vision of this future a more positive future. And we work with a methodology that is called transmedia. So to achieve that future of a better environment, caring about the environment, in the long term, they have to do something in the short term. And what we are doing with them is working in what we call citizens-based laboratories. And that is what we are going to see now, how this process has evolved. This is an ongoing process, and it has been very challenging because most of the work we have been done virtually. So the images that you will see are not all, I know, are not all very good quality because the same people from the community took the pictures, and we didn't use a broadcaster, so you will hear the voices of the people. So that is what is the video about.
Con nuestro proyecto Transformando Marchihue 2050, hoy tenemos en Marchihue la oportunidad de explorar el futuro y mostrar al mundo cómo podríamos mejorar la forma en que vivimos actualmente, con el objetivo de cuidar nuestro planeta, que es nuestro hogar. La pandemia es un ejemplo concreto y real sobre cómo nuestro contexto puede cambiar tan radicalmente de un día para otro. Es un ejemplo real sobre una tendencia que es una realidad, el cambio constante. En un contexto de cambio, una de las habilidades más necesarias que los humanos de hoy y las nuevas generaciones deben desarrollar es la de aprender nuevas formas de hacer las cosas, de transformarnos, estimular la creatividad y una actitud sostenible en innovaciones sociales favorecedoras del desarrollo sostenible. Nuestro proyecto surge del diagnóstico ciudadano realizado en el marco del programa de acción local del POSIS Marchihue Urbano de la región de O'Higgins, para impulsar la transformación ciudadana frente al cambio climático. En este proyecto realizaremos un laboratorio ciudadano de narrativas transmedia para escenarios futuros, Transformando Marchihue 2050, donde invitamos a la ciudadanía a imaginar, mediante las narrativas transmedia, dos escenarios futuros posibles. Uno donde no se realizan acciones para cuidar nuestro planeta, representado a través de un cortometraje de ciencia ficción, y otro que pueda sostener el presente y la vida de las nuevas generaciones mediante un laboratorio ciudadano. Actualmente existe una nueva forma de contar historias porque existen múltiples medios para contarla. Es lo que conocemos como narrativa transmedia. En este momento estamos diseñando la narrativa donde van a estar nuestros personajes y los temas específicos que vamos a abordar a lo largo de estos relatos. Cada personaje está ligado a su cultura y al deseo de transformación. Tendremos una visión de cómo se podría transformar Marchihue en el futuro mediante laboratorios ciudadanos que podemos empezar a construir hoy y proyectar qué es lo que queremos hacer en el futuro desde una perspectiva sostenible y que involucre activamente a toda la comunidad.
Marchihue 2050. Nuevos vientos mueven el futuro.
Advertencia: lo que verán a continuación es producto de nuestra imaginación, una narrativa de escenario futuro que podría ser realidad, producida por integrantes del grupo motor Marchihue 2050.
Imaginemos que una persona llega a un centro cultural moderno.
Hay grupos de personas repartidos por todos los espacios.
¿Qué fabrican?
¿Por qué se han reunido hoy en ese lugar?
¿Y qué es lo que hacen exactamente?
Otras construyen cosas y hablan entre sí.
Huertos y plantas.
Hay pizarras, anuncios de eventos y paneles informativos.
Muchos cables y aparatos electrónicos destripados.
Otros escuchan con atención a alguien que parece estar explicando algo.
Y en el fondo, en una zona verde, niños y niñas juegan en una especie de estructura escultórica. También hay maquetas de prototipos de madera. En este laboratorio hay tanta energía positiva. La potencia de las comunidades construyendo juntas realmente puede generar innovación social. Ha sido un espacio de aprendizaje constante, un sitio que no te deja indiferente, no cuando lo escuchas, sino cuando lo vives.
Estamos creando un espacio común para vivir juntos. Es como una incubadora de comunidades, donde aprendan las personas de contextos muy distintos, que nos permita resolver nuestros propios conflictos, pero de una manera más horizontal, donde los expertos y los científicos están para acompañar, para facilitar, no para ser instructores, porque es un espacio para experimentar y aprender de nosotros mismos y de los demás. Es como un aprendizaje social. Por otra parte, reconociendo, ¿no es cierto?, que todos los conocimientos son válidos. El conocimiento local y el conocimiento ancestral es tan válido como el científico. Es un lugar donde venimos a prototipar, es decir, a diseñar prototipos que que nos permiten diseñar soluciones, pero soluciones que parten con una pregunta con sentido y que están alineadas con el contexto. Con la seguridad que hemos escuchado a todos los involucrados y donde el conocimiento es un bien común. Y las narrativas de transmedia son la base para imaginar un futuro. Y no solo imaginar un futuro, sino que estas narrativas nos permitan también imaginar respuestas actuales y comunicar estas cosas, estas soluciones que vamos imaginando.
Son las 9 de la noche, hora de escuchar las voces que construyen Marchihue 2050. Bienvenidos al programa de acción local FOSIS Marchihue Urbano 2021.
Un podcast del Laboratorio de Narrativa Transmedia para Escenarios Futuros, producido en el marco de la ejecución del programa Acción Local de la línea programática de habilitación social del FOSIS.
Marchihue 2050. Nuevos vientos mueven el futuro.
These citizens-based laboratory are a way of getting people to work together for a long-term future. And it's so touchy, really, to see the people when you are working with these people and they're being actively working in the project, and to hear their voices and to see what they record is there with the telephone. So this is for them, for the people that is working in the project. So thank you very much for everybody to be here.
Congratulations, Paulina. It's a really great project. Very inspiring. So, and with that, I think we have seen so much, rising in transformation and reason for optimism. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. And with that concludes this event. Thank you.